listen, never in my life associated the word boring with baseball.
We know what's up.
Me? Yeah. Famous? Yeah.
And I'm like giddy over there smiling like, we're about to win this shit.
Did everyone give you crap? Give me a good host story.
I'm not picking it up.
We both love the game.
We talk about it every day.
Getting on baseball.
Having some popcorn, you're fooling around your phone.
I'd have to wait in line for 3 hours.
Hang on, because it's about to be a wild ride.
And welcome to another edition of West Coast Bias. My name is Alonso Sarinana. I don't matter as much as the guy that's joining me today. He's a friend, very fortunate to call him a friend. This dude does a lot of stuff. He is the voice of the Salt Lake Bees. He's called some games for the big team with the Los Angeles Angels. Does one of the paths that is my favorite to cross with him is with our full-time jobs is working in broadcast. He does stuff for ESPN, for Big Sky men's basketball, does even some G League basketball, Weber State basketball. He's all over the place, so you may hear him, but you may not know what he looks like. The incomparable and a really good philanthropist for some causes that are close to my heart. Fighting childhood cancer, stuff like that. I had to throw that in there, Tony. Sorry. Tony Parks, the voice of the Salt Lake Bees, joining me for a few minutes today. How are you, Tony?
What an introduction, man. Like, wow, I don't know what to say other than just, thank you. It's an honor to be on the show. I love hanging out with you, man. You and I get together and we'll get going down the rabbit hole about any sports topic. And all of a sudden we're checking our watches, going a little longer than we probably should before we break the huddle. But, talking sports is always fun. Talking sports with a guy like yourself is top line, man, because I love your insight. I love your, you're honest. You see that you have great connections. I love the behind the scenes stories that you love to tell. And it just makes it fun because it's everything that we love about being around sports.
Well, I appreciate that. But I am still a nobody in comparison to you, and I'm still going to stick by that.
So not true.
So real quick, before we get into the thing, to pull the curtain back, a part of why Tony and I are connecting, aside from we've been trying to connect for a while and we just both get busy, the Salt Lake Bees just did a launch of the Utah Dirty Sodas, and you guys sent us some merch, and I'm pretty stoked about it. I haven't seen it yet, so let's take a peek here, and then that way you can tell the people about the Utah Dirty Sodas. So if you follow...
This is a raw unveiling here?
Unveiling, really.
Okay.
So as a person that wears hats all the time, you guys sent me hats. So we have a Utah Dirty Sodas hat, the fitted. Shout out to the Bees. Sorry, Utah Dirty Sodas. Got ourselves a Utah Dirty Sodas Flex Fit. This one's actually kind of cool. I am colorblind, so you're going to have to tell me the colors. I'm colorblind.
I'm color deficient. So
hey.
I think it's actually like black and red.
Maybe we're colorblind. So if you're watching this, please comment what colors these are, because I'm colorblind.
One of the few things we didn't know about each other right there.
No.
About live in the moment. If you notice in my broadcast, I never mention who's wearing what color jersey with what trim and what, unless I already know it.
That makes sense.
Checking the website. But yeah, I love it with the hat, by the way. You're going to love that. Swiggy is the mascot.
Swiggy.
Yeah, it's awesome. And some people, some of the players were like, what is a dirty soda? Like, what are we talking about here? And, back in 2010, Nicole Tanner, who kind of created her own business with dirty sodas for people who just want to go get a soda with a mixture of different syrups, different flavors, different things like that. It's really, really cool. And it caught a great craze here in the state of Utah. And when she took on that business, there was an accountant who said that, it was kind of 6 months and they were probably going to be done. And she just had this desire and this drive and this passion. And what I love more than anything is this unwavering belief in what she was doing in her business, not because she said so, but she just had a vision. Like, she was in those situations of being in a drive-through where she has to wait for everybody else to get her food, and all she wants to do is get a soda. And so she really went all in on it, and I love to see it. She also does a great job working with young people to develop them into leaders for her business and showing how they can be successful. And that business blew up, that being Swig. And then she went on to, defeat cancer, to just be such an inspiration. So what I think is so unique, first of all, what a great original idea. We love minor league baseball. We're not a fan of small time, and this is not small time. It's minor league. It's got a great kick to it. and it's something personal to the state of Utah. It's unique. It's a new name. And it really, I think, brings in something for every resident of Utah to be like, hey, that's actually something I'm familiar with. And then you go into the backstory of Nicole. I think it's as perfect as you could ask something like that to be. And so big props to everybody on that marketing team who helped, get that vision going forward, and the partnership with Swig. I mean, a match made in heaven.
Yeah, it's whatever color this is, that's the colors. So it's sick. That's Swiggy. And again, shout out to the Salt Lake Bees for the merch for myself, Radfo, and Joe Kelly here at Baseball Isn't Boring. And we will be sending you guys some merch, some of this wonderful merch that's back here. Obviously, that's in Spanish, so I'll translate for you, Tony. Baseball no es aburrido, which is baseball isn't boring in Spanish.
Yeah. All I know is adios pelota. That's not.
Hey, the way you just enunciated that, respect to you, sir.
Hey, I can actually read Spanish all right.
Okay.
I just don't know what I'm even saying. Like,
that's fair.
In front of me, I could read it. People will be like, "Oh, you speak Spanish?" I'm like, "No, I have no idea what that just. I have no clue."
Well, again, thank you to the Salt Lake Bees for the merch. If you can get it online, I'm a huge fan of all the minor league teams that do kind of the off branding. I have the El Paso Chihuahuas gimmick. I have the San Antonio Flying Chanclas hat. Yeah. I think it's the Corpus Christi Calaveras. I have that somewhere. So, and I don't remember what team in Texas it was. It may be in Texas. Someone was the Lowriders. I have that hat somewhere. Yes, but huge shout out to all those MILB teams that are doing the thing. Utah Dirty Sodas, check it out. For those of you that don't know, I do live and work in Utah, and so I am unfortunately familiar with what a dirty soda is. I thought it was booze. It is not booze. It is flavoring that you get at a drive-through, and that's it. Like you get a flavored soda. That's what's called a dirty soda. Yeah. And Swig is kind of the big deal around these parts. And I know it's like regional now. It's kind of all over the place. But again, big shout out to the Salt Lake Bees. Thank you again for the merch. On behalf of special shout out to Tyler Gibbons for kind of getting all that sorted. And to Tony. So we'll get you guys sorted with some gear. So looking forward to that. But as we look at the big team, as we talk shop now, there's some guy named Jose Soriano that was not good last year in Philadelphia. He struggled. He had a rough go. Angels get him, shows up to camp doing the thing. As it stands right now, let me actually read this stat because I saw it earlier and I didn't think it was true, and I had to do a little bit of digging, but it's true. Where is it? Okay, I've lost it. I'll find it in a moment. But Soriano has kind of the opportunity. So he's 4-0 with a 0.33 ERA through 27 innings of work. Granted, very small sample size. He's recorded 31 strikeouts to just 6 walks, which is crazy. That's actually really crazy, especially at the start of the season. His fastball velocity, the whiff rate, ground ball rate, they're all kind of in that 80th percentile or higher for things. And again, those are things that matter. And he kind of has the potential to maybe sniff at a kind of something that the one guy, Big Sexy, did. I think it was in 2005. Kind of sniff at the Cy Young. So I wanted to ask you, man. Number one, from what you've seen of Jose, how real is it? And number two, is it sustainable?
Well, it can be if he stays healthy. I mean, that's going to be the number one thing. And I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think it's sustainable when you get into, okay, so yesterday it was 10 Ks, 7 innings. I mean, he owned that game from the very beginning. And yes, they made me a little nervous in the 8th and 9th, just giving up 3 and 3, but whatever. They still win the series, they win the game. And he was the star of that show. Where I really like what I'm seeing from him is executing the game plan. And I watched that a lot last year with the Bees, and I understand that the Pacific Coast League and, the American League is not the exact same thing here. But what I watch is when guys are executing the plan really well within the organization, a lot of those quality starts don't necessarily come with 10 Ks. Sometimes they'll come with a low number of Ks, but soft contact, getting guys to hit into the type of shift that they have lined up. They go deep into understanding what a tendency is for an opponent. And so when the depth of the scouting report is there from the catchers, and I really think the catchers deserve a ton of credit in this too, and then you see what Jose is able to do in the early part of the year. Yeah, it is sustainable. Now the fun part is going to be everybody else catching on to what the Angels are doing and Jose is doing, and then how much better he can be against them with the more information, that they garner with him in this situation. So I'm excited for it just because, you know what, this is something unique at the early part of the year where, you're not fluking your way into something. There is some real, it's a small sample size, so there's no guarantee he's going to win the Cy Young. Kohanowitz had, I think, a nice start last year. Detmers a few years ago had a nice start. And we know that over the course of a 6-month season, a lot can change. But if you're an Angels fan, you should be excited about, hey, you know what? We got something here that I think we have a legitimate ace that could have the type of year that we can get excited about, and hopefully some other things go into place. Because when you're trying to go from 99 losses to what they were last year, that's actually a much easier jump than to try and go from what you were last year to then to be a serious threat for the postseason. It's just a much tougher jump. People don't really understand how hard it is. You can go from the basement to, get yourself right in the playoff hunt till late July and into early August, maybe, where they were kind of on the outside looking in. But to make that next jump where you're needing to be taken very seriously every time you're out there, it's hard. But at least you have like a piece of this. And let's just be honest, Trout, when healthy, kind of was that piece of that, but you didn't have something that you felt could be sustainable. I think that this is sustainable. I'm excited for him, and I'm hoping that he carries it on throughout the rest of the year. But this is when's the last time you can remember where this team really had something? I guess it's Ohtani. I'm trying to think where you really had something where you're going, wow, okay. I remember when the Cubs finally had like something with Arrieta, Lester, and you're going, all right, like, defensively, they're pretty good now, where there was a sign. Last year, it was, hey, they're doing some good things with their draft picks and their guys. It was kind of a sign, but you didn't really know with some of that inexperience how it was going to hold up. Soriano's experience. Soriano has obviously found a really nice groove here, and the personnel are clicking, and so it's at least one really good sign towards something potentially great.
And my apologies to Soriano. I got him a wrong Latino name that I was confused with. I was thinking of Jordan Romano, who's with the Phillies. We'll talk about him in a second. But Jose was with the incredible name, the AA Rocket City Trash Pandas. Incredible. Because during my tenure in baseball, they were with the AA Arkansas Travelers, not the Rocket City Trash Pandas. Incredible name. But even then, last year, it wasn't an abysmal year, right? It was good, solid-ish, like kind of a stepping stone, but he had arm issues, right? And so that's obviously where that stuff kind of lingers, where you kind of think like, okay, where can we go from this? And again, it was also a small sample size last year before he got hurt. I think it was like 23, 24 appearances, something like that. And to your point with the Angels, it's fascinating because this show, I try to talk as much of the West Coast teams as I can, but unfortunately, the West Coast team that really just kind of dominates everything is the Dodgers, right? And that's fine. It is what it is. But when you kind of look around the West, the A's are always pretty quiet. The Angels are always pretty quiet. And some of it has to do with, like you said, they lost 99 games last year. That's kind of tough to watch that. And it's a new season. And right now, I think given where they're at, 8-8 isn't a bad spot to kind of be in, as you're kind of figuring out what your roster is going to look like, who your everyday guys are going to be. Because to be perfectly, fair, they have a lot of youngsters, they have a lot of veterans, they have a pretty good mix, and you're kind of trying to figure out what that's going to look like in the long run. And then one of those guys, Jordan Romano, I believe through 5 games has an ERA of 0, which great, right? Like those are the things you kind of want to see to build on. So with that said, for you, as the season started for the Angels, you called a couple games in the spring, so you kind of saw it firsthand. What were your realistic expectations as you kind of watched them in spring down in Tempe?
Well, one of the biggest things I wanted to see, because the 24 year, you lose 99 games. Last year, you showed a notable improvement. And I give Perry a lot of credit because he came out and said Look, you're going to see a noticeable improvement on this team. Well, if you lose 94 games, you could say, well, we're improved. And he went out on his own to say, not just subtle improvement, not just some numbers. You're going to see a good quality jump in the way we compete and the way we contend, kind of series in and series out. They sweep the Dodgers twice. The series against the Red Sox was awesome. Christian Moore makes the climb up, and by no means was he going to win, Rookie of the Year. But in those 53 games, had like a 14-game on-base streak. He's extremely young. You're seeing some budding growth from a number of areas. So what I was curious to see now is, what does that really look in this next stretch? And for my hope, it was, okay, if you're going to now become something where you're in bigger threat than you were last year. Like, once again, I'm not saying this team's going to host an LCS game. I'm saying that, okay, can you now make a step where I've watched teams in the past who make that climb where I go, oh, you know what? They're not bad. They're all right. Like, they got something here. So what were those signs going to be? And I wanted to see it from pitching. And I wanted to find it from somewhere. And so now it's that first sign where I'm going, all right, you're 8-8. And you have something you can actually lead to. You're not 8-8 with a throwing error that won a game, and this dude rolled into a double play and you got out of this, and some bounces kind of went your way. You could be, sure, you could be 10-6, you could be 6-10, and it's kind of No, you've actually got something there. And by the way, I love the way that they were able to win that game yesterday with one home run, and you put up 9 runs and 1 home run on the day. So it's stuff like that where I'm seeing them run the bases better. I'm seeing them, the overall baseball IQ is up. Like, I'm seeing some of those things sharpen up, and that to me is encouraging. So you see these subtleties start to take place now at the AAA level. I'm watching guys, okay, are they going to be prepared for the next level, right? Somebody could barrel up some balls, but do they have the right discipline? Well, now Christian Moore has drawn 20 walks, and a lot of these are competitive walks. I'm really impressed. Down in the count, 1-2, fouling them off. Some great tough takes, a key challenge, sparks a 4-run inning. Christian Moore, who intelligently runs on the inside of the first to second base path to eliminate a potential double play, and they don't get the lead man, and it sparks a key, crooked number in an inning. And I'm going, okay, that's the stuff. These aren't guarantees to be something. But I got to be honest, there's times where I watched where I thought, man, they don't have it buttoned down often enough. You're seeing that a little bit more. You still saw some of the bizarre mistakes. You still saw some of the ill-timed mental errors, not hitting the cutoff man, not throwing to the right base. Now those things are cleaned up a little bit more. So to me, the fundamentals are looking better. And then, like I said, you have something in pitching you can rely on. So at least now, as you go forward, the record's one thing, but there's at least something materializing. And like I said before, it's been a while since it's been that way for this team.
It's funny, when I was kind of doing a little bit of research like on Soriano, because he's quietly doing what he's doing. I was kind of thinking, like, man, when's the last time that they kind of had a pitcher do what he's doing right now? And when you really kind of sit, like I mentioned Bartolo Colon, and that's the obvious kind of like somewhat comp, but we also forget how good Jared Weaver was when he first came up. And I think that's a good comp in the sense of kind of like when Weave came up, he and I don't mean any disrespect whatsoever. It's just kind of looking at the thing. He did it kind of quietly, and then as the season progressed, they got louder and louder, right? And Soriano has the potential of doing that, but in that same respect, this starting kind of rotation that the Angels have quietly is a pretty solid rotation, all things considered, right? You have Reed Detmers, who you mentioned. You have UCA, whose last name I cannot say, and I'm not going to try to say it. The other guy whose last name I'm not going to try to say, but you're going to correct me because you're that guy. Kokanowitz, I believe is how you say it.
Kokanowitz, yeah.
Kokanowitz, yeah. Like those are some dudes, right? Like that are, back to kind of the unfair comp. But then you have Jose, right? Like we said, quietly kind of doing the thing. Kohanowitz earned his spot in the spring. And then Ryan Johnson, who moved up through the system pretty quickly, quietly kind of did that as well. But and then you have to forget too, Alec Manoah is on the IL, starting the season on the IL, and Grayson Rodriguez, I believe, is also on the IL. And those were the guys that were kind of projected to be in the spots of Ryan Johnson and Jack there. And I think it's worked out where you're kind of seeing what you have in the farm to kind of like to navigate that. I'll be honest though, I don't think the pitching is what I kind of wanted to see as far as like to kind of get the litmus test. For me, I think it was the outfield group because that Jorge Soler is kind of a bit of a wild card, no pun intended. There's been stuff around him over the last little while, and so you always wonder about that with Trout. If Trout's healthy, he's Mickey Mantle still, right? And then Joe Adele has had a kind of an up and down, ebb and flow situation, and to go from and he's been a highly touted prospect for a long time. And we all know what the tools that Joe has in his toolbox. You've seen him firsthand calling the games for the Bees.
Unbelievable.
And he has it all, right? It's just a matter of kind of getting it all together. Like you said, the clicking of even the pieces they have up there. But I think for the first time in a really long time, that group, that outfield group, they may have something there. Am I looking a little too deep into that?
I don't think you're wrong. Here's the key thing. My biggest thing was, can I find a model of consistency? We've seen Soler be unbelievable on the biggest stages, by the way. I mean, on the biggest stages, the dude can tear it up. And Joe Adele is an amazing story. I had a chance to see him last year in September. We had a great conversation. I mean, I'm taking him way back so many years. And let's just be honest, when watching him in some of those early years, I mean, horrible routes on balls. This was not a good defensive player. I mean, just flat out. You could tell he was athletic. You could tell like he had some great talent, but there was a lot of work to be done. And so this is what's interesting when you go from being like this kind of team that's where they are right now. A few guys have to move from being a great story to being a great player. And does that happen? Because I can tell all their stories. I love all their stories, from Kohanowitz to Adele to, we could go all day. Bryce Teodosio, I can go all day long. I love their stories. The fans love their stories. But as they want to compete, their big thing is great story. Now can they move to great players? And I remember when I was covering the Utah Jazz, years ago, and they had a group of dudes who were awesome stories. But Ronnie Brewer at some point, right, has to like take a big step, or even if it was, who else am I thinking about? Well, Joe Ingles, who eventually, did something like that, or CJ Miles. Like, guys would have these great stories, but the big discussion was, or an Andre Karolinko, when do they move to being a great player? And so I'm with you. It's going to be interesting on how it happens. The other big question is that I was looking at in spring training: organizational depth. It's one thing to say, boy, we got a lot of guys. No. Do you have dudes? And how many do you really have? So right now with the Bees, that is a loaded lineup. I think it's a loaded lineup. I think you have two legit great potential leadoff hitters at the AAA level. I think they're excellent, right? And Christian Moore and Nelson Rada. Now the question is, do they develop to now be that? In the middle of your lineup, Nico Kavadas is hitting moonshots right now. Jose Siri, I think, is a great player to have to support some great depth there. Trey Mancini, who I was most excited about out of anybody from the new additions, right? And so the big question now becomes, from Nick Madrigal to any of these guys, does it formulate now where you get legitimate depth that you can count on, consistency, and then, by the way, you gotta have studs. And you're hoping Soriano can be that. And then you're hoping others can kind of somewhat formulate to that, because Kohanowitz has great stuff, but was up and down, right? Reed Detmers has great stuff and occasionally has to fine tune on a few things, right? So we know at their very best, that's what the Angels have. A number of guys that at their very best, you look at them and go, all right, there's something there. Now it's, can you find that model of consistency? And over 162 games, that's what it's going to take. And that's what they're trying to find. And that's what every team's after.
With Trout, who, listen, I've said this before, I'll say it again. If Trout's healthy, he is the Mickey Mantle of this era. It's not even close, right? And I think, and that's really going to be the one, I don't even want to say asterisk, right? But that's going to be kind of he's a Hall of Famer. I don't see how he's not. Like there's going to be, but then again, that discourse will come in due time. But with Trout, listen, there's never been a doubt that he's not worth the 12-year, $427 million deal he got. That's never been in flux at all. But with Trout, is there any kind of internally, is there any worry with kind of his durability kind of moving forward? And the only reason I say that is, like, I feel like with him, ultimately, I think a part of where some of these, the vibe comes from to the average fan, it looks like it's like a routine thing where he gets hurt. And so that's why these people kind of think he's like, oh, he's kind of soft. That's not the case at all, right? Like your body, listen, when you're he's only 34 years old. I keep forgetting, like he's been so good for so long that you forget that the dude is only 34 years old. So with all that said, with Trout, like aside from the healthy part, what else kind of consistently needs to happen? Because Trout, when he's 100%, that dude's such a special dude. It's not even fair.
Mm-hmm. I think, well, when it comes to Trout, yeah, you hope he just stays healthy. I mean, that's the number one thing. I'll never forget being at spring training and I finish up with a bunch of stuff. I am later than anybody, had a bunch of things to file, go downstairs, say goodbye to the attendant who's down there who got me my credential over on the fields off to the side at Tempe Diablo Stadium. And I hear a crack of the bat going off and it is 7:17 p.m. right in there, something like that. And I just peeked my head in because I'm standing right there, and there's Mike Trout getting cuts in, to it, last one to leave, jumps in his truck or whatever, and was on the way. And I just remember watching him like, wow, we knew each other from when he was in Salt Lake for a minute, but even then I'm like, yeah, you're here a lot later than I thought I would see you here. His work ethic, his toughness, his skill, talent, all of that. Health sadly becomes a real challenge for any player in any sport, and especially when you play it at the level that he does. And so if the Angels want to have successful years, keeping him healthy is going to be key. How often you use him as a DH is nice, or just finding different ways. And then the other thing is there's just an inherent risk there. The never-ending conversation, and it's going to happen constantly in whether it's, Tim Kirkshin going, I talked with GMs earlier today, and they told me. And it's going to be that, okay, if you wanted to do something to gather more assets to build for the future, is this that piece to utilize and to go forward with? And what you really have to evaluate is underneath the surface, the other value he has to the rest of the clubhouse, things like that. And is it actually paying off towards something big in the future? There's so many variables that go into that conversation that, this is where people like in Perry's position, they have to be able to make that calculated decision, make it the right way, and know for sure that it's going to work out. Us from the outside, or any random fan saying, well, it's just going to get hurt, and then this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, you go into doomsday mode. But what you would have to evaluate is that if we get honest about the challenges for the Angels, really over the last 10 years, having the best player in the game, or one of the absolute best, and throughout all of those years, is far from their biggest issue. It is just far from the biggest issue. And so as they try to actually examine where the challenges have been in the previous years and how they're going to change those things going forward, the Trout part to me is one that, I can see why the value would be there to make a change like that. And I could see why you would hang on to him. I just think it's one of those where you've got to get serious about, if you make the change to make a change's sake, and you don't change the other bad habits that are going on underneath the surface, you're going to have the same problem in a different version. You will. So this guy wants to stay there. I think the Ohtani thing might have been a very different conversation, because now you get into the realistic likelihood that he was going to or likely go somewhere else.
It's interesting because, and the reason I phrase the question kind of open-ended the way I do is, like you said, the casual fan is going to look at it like, oh, they got to trade him. They got to move on from him. And like you said, it's so multifaceted that it isn't just as easy as moving on from that, because we forget that Ohtani was just there. Like, it wasn't that long ago. And you kind of look back and it still blows my mind that you had Ohtani and Trout on a roster together, and at one point you had Albert Pujols on a roster with him, and you no playoff appearances, and it's again, like, those sorts of things kind of come to mind, and you're just like, what the hell? And those are like, in a casual ball knower, like, his mindset would be like, oh yeah, they made the playoffs a couple times, right? No. And so obviously a big part of it is the depth, right? And that's the other reason I phrase it the way that I do. Yeah. So you mentioned that kind of the overall kind of maybe worry looking ahead is the depth. Is there a position group at all that has you kind of worried, to use a football term, a position group that has you worried depth-wise going into the season, if they are to kind of, have a run, as, like you said, not host an LCS game, right? But maybe sneak into the wild card.
Yeah, to make that big jump where they're a bigger threat. My thing was, be a bigger threat later into the season. Can you really be in that conversation at any point in September or at the very, very end of August where people are like, all right, if they get hot, they could get in, right? Like, is something like that going to happen? I would have to say it's relief pitching. I mean, I think, and every team wants more of it. Every team, you can't have enough depth of it. But the Salt Lake Bees right now, in going into Sunday, had the worst ERA in all of minor league baseball. And that is a really tough challenge when you don't give yourself a chance to win. I mean, I'm not saying anything that's mind blowing here. When you don't give yourself a chance to win and you're giving up too many runs, 12 walks in one game, pitching from behind him another game, giving up a 5-run lead late and giving up 5 in the 7th and 5 in the 8th. And, these things just don't spell recipe for success, right? So there's a number of positions on the field. There's a number of good power. There's a good leadoff opportunity. There's things like that. And that, to me, they had a good starting rotation, I thought, at the beginning of the year, that being Salt Lake. But a number of guys got called up, which is the point. So if it's just simply guys getting called up and that's depleting it, that's one thing. But the relief pitching from the start of the season, that has been a concern. And at the end of the year last year, I thought they formulated very well to build some. And Salt Lake had the best record in the PCL over 40 games. And I understand that you don't get a trophy for that. But when we look big picture, you were seeing Bachman really nail it shut. You were starting to find a group of guys where you could go, wow, 7th, 8th, 9th, 0, 0, 0. Occasionally they'll give up a run, but they had a huge stretch of shutout innings. And it was really, really encouraging to see. And so that, to me, is where I would put my biggest concern when it comes to depth, is because right now, this team in Salt Lake is still searching for answers. Good guys, some good stuff. Dylan Phillips, who I think has had a really nice start to the season. But when you talk depth, when you're talking about the number of guys you can rely on, right now it's not there to this point, and the numbers prove it out.
Tony Parks, the voice of the Salt Lake Bees, also calls some Angels games here and there, giving us a few more minutes of his time here before we wrap this thing up. For you, as we kind of, obviously the season just started, right? But I think it's kind of important to point out that the roster construction, again, going back to it, it's not a bad roster. I actually don't like, they went out and got Drew Pomeranz. I think that was actually a great move for the clubhouse. I think a guy that quietly gets overlooked is Travis d'Arnaud. That's a great dude to kind of have, calling the shots, and so on and so forth. For you on this roster right now, as you kind of look at it, because you've been around a good chunk of these guys, for you, who's kind of the glue guy on this roster for Angels fans?
Well, I know Ohapi has had a big influence when it comes to that clubhouse. And when they talk about when things turned around last year, the big discussion I had is, okay, well, where did it start? Where did it start? And I get that the turnaround was not, like Angels in the Outfield, the movie or anything, but we're talking like just a turnaround where it's like, you know what? You can't just roll out of bed and take 3 out of 4 against you guys anymore. Like you gotta bring it. And the Angels were a much tougher team last season, especially in the early chapters of the year. And unanimously, the answer was Logan Ohapi came in and he had an attitude about a standard and he held himself to that standard. And there was it was non-negotiable. And this is the way it's going to be. And then I had heard from some others, and you love to hear this, that when Logan wasn't playing as well as he wanted to, it took it very hard because he didn't just want to be the vocal leader. He doesn't see himself as Rudy Rudiger out there. No, he wants to go out and play really well. And he holds himself to that standard in terms of the work, the leadership, the toughness, the consistency, winning each rep, doing those things with concentration and intentional effort towards everything you do. And so then he took it hard when he still did those things. He also wanted to play very well. It was personal to him, and it is personal to him that he plays well and that he does everything he can for his team. And so those are things that I think like you need that somewhere in an organization. You must have that. And that's kind of Yolmer Sanchez, I would say, for the Salt Lake Bees. And he was formerly known as Carlos Sanchez. And they still love him here in Chicago, by the way. Sox fans everywhere. He's still like a fan favorite. But, when you have something like that, not only does it keep the locker room together, the clubhouse together, and it keeps everybody focused on a common or it keeps them focused on a common goal, but it also keeps them with the attention to detail. The little things matter. So it was Logan Ohapi, and I'm, just hoping, those are guys that you always hope can continue to flourish and continue to come out on top.
I'm going to ask you 2 more questions and we'll wrap this thing up. Number 1, we've been around this organization in different capacities for a long time. And, I remember how the coaching tree was for a long time, right? Like the social coaching tree has afforded us the Joe Maddens, right?
Yeah.
Different dudes that have come out of there. And I think Kurt Suzuki was a quiet hire, but I think it was a great hire. Because I think what's unique to the game now is, you always hear about like how Dave Roberts is a player's manager. I mean, that dude hasn't played for a long time. And so this era of player is a little different from, even 5 to 10 years ago than today. Right. And it's obviously a little more data driven, things like that. And you kind of have to have someone that can kind of grasp that. I think Kurt Suzuki not only was a quiet hire, but he did a great job of filling out kind of the coaches. I think the quiet out of all, like there's 2 moves that he made that were quietly really good ones. Hiring John Gibbons as his bench coach, I actually think was a great move. And then hiring Brady Anderson as his hitting coach, I think was a great move. But then you kind of have, KJ, right? KJ, who one of the best human beings that any of us know. He finally got the call up to be a third base coach up there. And that's a role where, Dino Ebel, right, was in that role for a period of time. And so there's been some dudes up there. But again, Mike Maddox is a pitching coach. Great dude there to have there. How do you feel about the current iteration of kind of the coaching staff? Because I feel like that was also in flux for the last couple of years as well.
I think it's very important because I have always felt like, and I've been around Mike Maddox. I've had the chance to be around, a number of great coaches and then managers in my lifetime, and Keith Johnson, obviously right towards the top when it comes to being a great guy, understanding a tremendous way with holding players accountable, holding himself accountable, connecting with a player with great emotional trust. There's a way that he does it that I think is spectacular. And I had a front row seat for that. And I'm honored to have the chance to watch that. This is a group that it is very clear. If you're not happy with your results, you can do one of 2 things. You can raise your level of commitment or lower your level of expectation. And they're not going to lower their, they're going to raise their level of commitment. That's just who they are. And that's what they do. And they take full responsibility for anything that happens out there on that field and with those guys. And this is a group of guys that will win the emotional trust of young players, veterans, and a collective group. When you have that, you have a real chance for growth. When you don't have that, even if you grow, it's minimal. Or if you hit a spurt, it seems more lucky. But when you're trying to find a deck of cards that you can shuffle 162 times and always have the belief that at some point good things are eventually going to come around, you want this type of mental makeup. And it just me personally, I feel like this is a group, and some of it I think comes from being a little more familiar with some of these guys. This is a group where I think they have more proper alignment all together with a group of minds and a vision altogether that I think is better than it has been in a long time. And I think the moves that they made to take minor league managers and coaches to have them moved up to affect the parent club like this with their insight, their knowledge, and their ability to also polish those relationships and that overall trust within the clubhouse. That was a terrific move. I thought they had a great offseason when it comes to the staff. Personally, I would like to see a few more years of commitment. When it comes, that's probably the only thing I would say, is I think that they have earned that, and I think they'll prove that this year. So I'm excited for that going forward. But that's when I look at the makeup, I think Angels fans should feel very good about how that was put together, because there's so much that comes in to running an organization. And there's a reason why they're called a manager, not a coach. And there's a reason why everything they do and how they have to do things comes to very fine details. And that's why I always look at, Dusty Baker as such a special manager. People would criticize a pitching change here or there or whatever, but if you really look at the teams and how he was able to get them to win, it was the element of emotional trust, the ability to connect, and guys wanted to run through a wall for him. And that's why I think so often, he had taken over teams that, hadn't been to the 7-Eleven in a while, and before you know it, they're in an LCS. And so I like that when I'm around this group. I feel that, and hopefully that can carry on.
No, and to your point, I think it's important to highlight, everyone kind of talks about culture this, culture that, right? And it starts and ends with your coaching staff, right? If your coaching staff isn't bought into the culture, the players are going to know right away. Like they're going to know the vibe. They're going to see it. And I think Kurt went about it similar to the roster where they went out and got some dudes that they may not have been the best, player per se, right? They may not have been like the star player, whatever, but they get it. They get the culture. They get, like you said, growth of any kind is growth. It doesn't matter how minimal or how large, growth is growth, especially at this level, right? But when you go out and you get an Adam Eaton, you go out and you get, like I mentioned, Brady Anderson, even like non-household names, right? John Mabry, like guys like that, like those guys. That those are like it doesn't matter that the casual doesn't know who they are, is that the clubhouse knows who they are, right? And they all kind of know their place. And I think that's where they went about it in a way, like to your point, where okay, they're emphasizing culture here, and I think that's good for Angels fan. Looking ahead, where they want to cement like this is our culture, this is what we're going to do, and it's either you're all and you're in the way, and that's a big thing, especially at this level, especially. If you're on a team that loses a lot, it's tough to go to work sometimes, right? And and at the end of the day, if you have the culture built, you're gonna really look forward to the culture, kind of being around these guys, because as these guys are together all the time. They are not together.
And these dudes don't care what you've done. After about the first 90 seconds of Googling you, they don't care. They want to know, are you the right guy to genuinely help me get where I'm going? And I watch Alonso Powell, the hitting coach, who was, with the Astros for all those years. He's been around the major leagues for, several years. He's worked with some of the biggest and best names, going back to Willie Mo Pena, this dude has, Carlos Beltran, you can list off, and he could sit there all day long and tell the stories. But none of that matters unless he can truly have influence. You can have expertise. What I like about this group is not only do they have expertise, they have influence, and they understand that part of it. And that's what made KJ, Keith Johnson, the manager of the Bees all those years. His record was one thing, but if you really look at what he was able to do with some players, it was fascinating. And so now the organizational depth, which was really waning a couple of years ago, is starting to, crystallize, starting to formulate. That's good. Things are moving in a good direction overall. And I think having a good staff that understands the key piece of influence, KJ played in 4 major league games or whatever it was. And then you may have someone else out there who has a trophy in their room, for an individual award. And these players, the key thing is, do you really have what it takes to help me get there? And this group does.
Last question. What is your favorite piece of Utah Dirty Soda's merch? Because I know you have some, and I don't want you to lie to me.
The jacket.
Wow. Okay.
I didn't get the jacket, and then I was roaming around the team store, and I saw it. Yeah, somewhere you didn't see it in person, so you're just kind of like, eh. And I saw it in person, and I regret not getting it, man. But I think I might have to lay down the dough for the Dirty Soda's jacket. Yeah. That was my number one. I got the jersey. I got the hat. By the way, the hat, and I thought looking at it on the images, I thought the cream hat was going to be better looking than black.
Oh yeah.
I think it's black, but I was like, okay, I was wrong. I think the darker one looks better, right? And then, I did that. But yeah, the jacket, man, it is smooth looking. It's black, looks good. The logo looks sharp. And Sammy Miller, our sideline reporter, got the jacket, and I was jealous. I was like, you know what? I did it wrong. I picked the wrong item.
So here, this is what I'm gonna do. Since I'm nobody of influence, but Joe Kelly is. So listen, this is a podcast platform owned by Joe Kelly. Please give the man a coat, because he just set it up on a tee for you to promote the coat. Please give him the coat. Please give him the coat.
I'm not going to turn it around. 200 East Illinois Street. If you send I'll give you my Salt Lake address. Well, we'll get it done.
I'll make some calls. How about that? We'll get it done. We'll get it done.
It will make up for you having a Packers emblem there in the background. I've had to stare at that this whole time, and I know you did that on purpose.
Yes, that's correct.
In fact, you did that on purpose.
For those that don't know, Tony's a Chicago native, a Chicagoan through and through. And so one of my favorite things to do is banter with him about our sports team.
You have it.
Wait, yes,
Heard
there,
about Michigan too.
there we go. So it's, but as a Trojan, then we're good. We can have that conversation down the road. But Tony, as we wrap this thing up, where can the people find you if they want to find all things Tony Parks?
Yeah, at Tony Parks 801, Instagram, Twitter, all forms of social media. And then we'll be on KMYU in Salt Lake City on our games Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. MILB TV is where you can find us for the games that are streaming. And we treat everything Major League. Everything we do is with Major League intention, Major League focus. I love it. And it makes it a lot of fun. And you're really going to love our broadcast. We have fun. We tell great stories. Sammy has great insight and reports on everything. And just all the meetings I had today, I love it because our passion is to be the absolute best we can. And we bring it for 150 games during the minor league season. And so the fans can be pleased with that. And then on the radio, we are on the KSL Sports Zone. So I can download the app and would love to have you listen to the games and hope you enjoy them.
If you enjoy listening to baseball, if you're a baseball junkie like I am and just want to watch minor league baseball, I don't gamble, but I literally just love baseball. That's the only reason I watch it. Please find all things Tony. He's one of the best at what he does. And here's the thing. He says we in that instance, and I respect him. It's a solo broadcast. He's going out there a la Vince Scully and doing it solo. So that's one of the biggest things that I respect about Tony, because that shit is hard. It is really hard. And he does it for 9 innings every single game. So my tip of the cap to you, sir, because you're one of the best to do it.
Well, it's very kind of you to say. I enjoy doing the play-by-play. I don't think Steve Stone would be impressed with the analysis. I pass. No, I'm just kidding. No, thank you, man. That's very kind of you. You've always been so great to me, and you're a great guy to be around. So I look forward to the next time we cross paths. And as always, you got my number. Anytime you need me, I'm here for you.
No, I appreciate it, Tony. And for those, again, this is Baseball Isn't Boring. This is West Coast Bias, presented by Baseball Isn't Boring. Just like the Utah Dirty Sodas, we have merch. Check it out, baseballisn'tboring.com. We have shirts in Spanish. We have shirts in Brazilian, or Portuguese, in all sorts of languages, in all the colors. I'm colorblind, but I know that is blue. I know that for a fact. But please, if you're not, please follow, subscribe, all that good stuff, all the things that the kids say when they're influencing out there. And I hope that you were influenced today with some baseball. For myself and Tony, my name is Alonso. I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, stay up, stay safe, and we'll chat soon.